support of those findings and will follow its standard report out process when it briefs the full City Council, as Brian said during the Finance and Administration Committee meeting this afternoon. The Auditor's Office made 4 findings that are both troubling and encouraging. The nature and appearance of those findings causes us some concern and shows us that we must do better. However, how those circumstances came to light are also encouraging because the process worked. Specifically, questions were raised by Community, Housing, and Human Services employees who brought those concerns to me shortly after I took office. We took some very preliminary evaluation steps to better understand the nature of those concerns and quickly determined that a complete evaluation was best handled by a third party. I'd like to thank the State Auditor's Office for quickly agreeing to help us and for working through all of the pandemic distractions to make sure that they stayed focused on completing this evaluation for us. The Auditor's Office has informed us about 4 findings related to policies and practices governing procurement, subrecipient agreements, conflict of interest, and gifting of public funds. The final report is available on the Auditor's website and will be published on the city's website this afternoon as well. So before I get to an overview of those 4 findings, I want to be clear that those noted in this report all left city employment prior to 2020. None of the findings include current employees or elected officials. So in short, the audit found that the department did not comply with city policy and procedure for 2 contracts awarded in 2019. Those contracts were for flooring repairs of $11,400 and $13,300. The department follows an informal practice to award subrecipient services rather than relying on adopted policies and written procedures. The state reviewed 3 contracts, and the department could not provide evidence that it followed its practices and solicited an RFP or performed a competitive bidding process for subrecipient agreements approved in 2019. And those contracts were in the amounts of $881,482, $740,000, and $495,841. And they were for warming center shelter operations. In review of the subrecipient agreements, the auditor found 2 of the 3 contracts referenced in the previous finding had an appearance of conflict of interest. In one instance, a former city council member participated in a subrecipient award process that included an organization whose founders contributed to the council member's mayoral election campaign. In the second instance, a department director responsible for the shelter and warming center programs participated in awarding the agreement and then left the city for employment with the subrecipient. No documentation existed to evidence the department or city resolved the potential conflicts of interest. The department reimbursed a consulting agency for 2 mortgage payments and 1 car loan payment for one of the agency's employees in 2017, totaling $2,453, which are personal, non-business expenses. According to department staff, a department director approved making the payments to the consulting agency as an alternative form of compensation for the employee's service hours worked under the agreement. These findings are serious, and we have already begun taking steps to improve policies, procedures, training, and practices. We will also report back on progress to the state auditor at regular intervals. Cupid Alexander, our Director of Neighborhoods, Housing, and Human Services, will discuss some of the specific actions that we're taking in just a few minutes. We are committed to making these improvements to protect the trust of the community and the integrity of our staff as we do the important work taxpayers expect from us. This has been a learning experience, and we will continue to be an opportunity, and it will continue to be an opportunity for us to improve how we deliver critical human services. We have to do everything we can to make sure this situation does not happen again. So before I turn things over to our council president, I want to call out our staff for their courage and commitment to ask tough questions when they saw something wasn't right. They stood up for their teammates. They stood up for this community. because they are committed to doing business the right way, and we all owe them a big thank you. So at this time, I'd like to invite Council President Breanne Beggs to comment.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I don't have too much to say, but I wanted to frame what we're hearing from the auditor's office, which is a concern with a lack of financial controls. Essentially, if I understand the report as I read it, it doesn't get into the details and determine actual misconduct or that a contract should have gone to a different vendor than the one that it went to. But what it did identify is that we were lacking in financial controls in several areas, and the city's committed to getting those controls in place because you not only want to get it right when you're doing procurement and awarding contracts, but you want the appearance to look right as well so that people have confidence. I can just speak for myself. I have not seen the investigation. I haven't seen the interviews or not, and I'm not sure if we'll get to or if the public will get to. I'm not sure who was interviewed and who wasn't interviewed. My understanding from the auditor's office is we need to make changes in our financial controls, which we will promptly do. And in terms of whether there was actual wrongdoing out there, I don't have enough information yet to determine that. But we will do our part on City Council to make sure that the appropriate financial controls are in place and that we are following the applicable rules. And I'm happy to answer questions when we get to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Council President Beggs, for that, and the mayor. And I too appreciate CHS Department for engaging in a formal process to improve how we handle our human services work. We have to avoid even the appearance of conflict or unequal treatment or access to other organizations that are doing this kind of work. As a community member and a council member, I don't feel there was a violation of intent for the use of these funds. We will hear a full report out in just a few minutes from the state auditor as in part of our standard engagement with the state. So we appreciate their willingness to add this evaluation to part of their regular work during COVID. And I, like Council President Beggs, have not read the report, but I am confident going forward that we will improve our processes and regain and maintain the trust of the community and the people that we are here to serve. At this time, I'll turn it over to Cupid Alexander.
Thank you, Council Member. So as you've heard from our elected officials, these findings are very serious. Since I came to the city in November, I have prioritized making sure that the policies, procedures, and practices are followed, evaluated, and improved where necessary. Our employees, as the mayor said, share a strong desire to ensure processes are followed and our work gets done the right way. And I want to give them a congratulations on that. That's why they asked the questions they did and why we are here today. I want to reiterate to you that the employees noted in the final report all left city employment prior to 2020. The city and our CHHS department have committed to a long list of improvements to policies, procedures, practices, and training. The full list is published in the city's response to the audit, but I wanted to call out several here. Those include establish protocol and implement a training program related to purchasing, provide additional training on personnel policies and procedures regarding how to report fraud, waste, abuse, and whistleblower protections, embed procurement training into the onboarding of future department employees, review and update policies and procedures, require employees to use a consistent and equitable process to evaluate, select, and award agreements to subrecipients, require all selection committee members to acknowledge having reviewed conflict of interest policies and procedures, ensure consultants are reimbursed for actual and appropriate business expenses, embed conflict of interest training into the onboarding process, provide ongoing education and review of conflict policies, require all employees to attend and complete the gifting of public funds training, and to provide department staff training for detailed process to use if an invoice or document is in question. So at this time, I'll turn it back over to Brian Coddington for the Q&A portion.
Thank you, Mayor, Council President, Councilmember Wilkerson, and Cupid. So that concludes our formal remarks. For a handful of members that joined late, members of the media that joined late, we're going to do a quick Q&A period. The press release covering the material, for those of you who might have missed it, will be going out here in about 15 minutes. You'll have a recap of the items that were covered by the various speakers, as well, and a link to the full audit report. So at this time, you've all been muted. So if you have a question, remember to unmute yourself, or put something in the chat that raises your hand. Let me know, and I'll unmute you as well. So at this point, let's turn it over for questions. Daniel, did you have a question? Okay, let me find you here.
Yeah, I can unmute myself.
It. Perfect.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, do we know who these agencies are specifically that we can identify? The report itself didn't name them. There was for example, there was an agency that reimbursed a consulting agency for 2 mortgage payments and 1 car loan payment for one of the agency's employees in 2017, totaling $2,453. Do you know which consulting agency that was?
Yeah, and I can take that question. So that's a question that's best posed to the state auditor's office. It's their evaluation and report. We're here to talk about the findings and our next steps, and they would have that information for you.
Okay, because my other question is were the because you mentioned that none of the people that were implicated are currently at City Hall. So I guess I'm wondering, who are the people that were implicated?
Yeah, again, that'd be a question that's best asked of the state auditor's office. But yes, they have all left city employment as of 2020.
Does the city know which people are implicated here?
Yes, the auditor's office has indicated to us who they are. Okay,
would you be able to share that with me?
That's a question best left for the state auditor's office. They will share that with you.
Do you know if there wasn't any, I'm wondering, were any of the people implicated interviewed? Do you know if any of the people who were implicated were interviewed?
Again, that's a question for the state auditor's office. We have asked the third party to conduct the evaluation, and they did not share with us an interview list and how it was conducted.
Okay, are you going to be following up on trying to answer those questions?
There'll be a report out today through our standard exit process with the Finance Administration Committee meeting, and we'll learn more information at that point.
Why not share which agencies and people were implicated here? Why leave that to the auditor's office?
Again, we've engaged a third party to do this evaluation. We made that determination very quickly that it was better to have that third party do that evaluation. And so as such, we've left it at arm's length to our third party to do that.
Is there any sort of, I know that there has been some, personnel changes recently in the CHHS department. Are any of those personnel changes related to the concerns raised in this report?
All those who were a party to the report had left employment by 2020.
Okay, but yeah, I guess I'm just sort of asking though. There's other people that have. Yeah, I guess I'm sort of wondering, were the people who have left since 2020, were there exits, or were there concerns of their exits related to any concerns that were raised in these reports?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. So one of the major problems that has sort of been identified in this report was this idea that there had been the process for awarding contracts for warming centers wasn't followed correctly. I guess I'm sort of wondering what the city's doing to make sure that they're able to have enough time and lead time to award those, to have the correct process to award the warming center contracts without rushing things or, cutting corners.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Cupid to answer that question, then, and Daniel, I'm gonna give some other people a chance to ask questions.
Okay. Yeah. No. I don't see any other faces. So yeah, that's okay. Thanks.
Daniel, yeah, thanks for that question. Currently, what we're trying to make sure is that there are outlined processes that already exist and that we're following them. Some are associated with the time frame that individuals have to respond through the RFP process, and us keeping track and keeping in tune with those processes outlined, and making sure that staff is aware of that, which they are, and that we're continuing to follow that. So I think the biggest question that you're asking is there a process? There is. Are we going to be following it, and making sure that the partners who go through the RFP process are aware of that? If you look at RFPs, it indicates the time frame that individuals have to respond and the time frame that we have internally to look through this and do our due diligence.
I guess I'm most concerned is, do you have enough time to be able to do that, or, lead time? Is this something, it seems like every year we're rushing to try to find warming centers. So what are you doing to make sure that doesn't happen?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think prior to COVID, that was absolutely one of the things that we would focus on. We've had to adjust due to the amount of work that the team has had. This year, how we're working ahead is knowing that not only that, but the wildfire season is coming. And we are making sure that we have processes in place in the eventuality that these things need to happen. So I do believe that we have enough time, and we're trying to make sure that we have the resources associated with that for the eventuality that this is coming. It's no new news to us that we're going to need shelter space in the winter and possible space due to wildfires due to our position within the Northwest. We do have what's called an emergency operations plan, and we have a great director who's been working on that. So we are, through the mayor's leadership and guidance, making sure that we're synthesizing what is going to be needed and projecting out the processes. So the time frames will associate with that. So I believe we do.
Are there going to be more staff hired as a result of that?
Sorry,
to be able to make that happen? Sorry,
Mayor, maybe you wanted to jump in here on the shift in the shelter plan and the year-round process. And then Adam, I see your hand raised, and we'll get to you here as soon as that mayor.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to take up Adam's time there.
No, that's okay. Good question, though, Daniel. Our plan is to operate Cannon year-round. We'll be putting out an RFP for that to provide a day shelter during the summer months, which is something that we haven't had before. And then pivot very, very quickly with the same provider to become a warming center during the winter months. So we won't be in a position of having to stand up a warming center on the fly. We would use the same operator for both day shelter and winter time warming center.
Thanks, Mayor. Adam, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey there, thank you. Yeah, sorry to harp on this more, but I'm curious, like when this started, it was, the city was making very clear that the intention of this audit was to be very transparent and clear with the public. And now that this report has come out and the city is aware of who is implicated in that report and is making a decision not to publicly name who is implicated in that report, what the justification is, and if that does not defeat the purpose of launching a report in the name of transparency to start with.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I should have been more clear about that. So it's not that the city's opting not to do that. We've talked to the state auditor's office, and this is their preferred method. They will answer those questions for you. They've asked us to refer those questions to them as the conductor of the report.
Okay, thank you. And when it comes to the city council member who was running for mayor during all this, is there a city policy in which that was a clear violation? A conflict of interest policy that you could point me to? And is there sort of a means or method to avoid such conflicts in the future with city council members who ostensibly are forced, at least in some respects, to review potential contracts when they vote on the expenditure? Should such city council members abstain in the future?
So I'll take the first half of that question, then maybe Council President, if you want to take the second half of that question. Adam, all of the policies and procedures that were reviewed by the state auditor's office are listed in the back half of the report. So you'll find all of those policies and procedures that they relied on in the report.
Hi, Adam. Brian here. So a couple of things. I think the actual, if I understand the report, and you could ask the auditor since it's there, they weren't concerned with council members voting on a contract if they had gotten campaign donations. It was the participation in the RFP process that's not necessarily a council member duty. It could have been anyone who was involved in that. And I still, because the same, a little bit, I wouldn't say frustration, but I haven't seen the interviews or not. So I don't really know if there was a violation of anything, but what I'm reading loud and clear from the auditor is that we need to have our RFP review process set up so that there's a clear acknowledgement in writing by members of the committees that they don't have a conflict of interest or even an appearance of conflict of interest. So we have to get those controls in place. I'm still waiting for really more information about who was interviewed, what was said, did a contract get awarded incorrectly. I just don't have enough to know about that. But, you know, as someone who has run for office and is on the city council, I definitely took the report as a cautionary tale to be careful and think about it. I also want to make it clear, I think if I read the report correctly, it wasn't that the founders of any entity made a donation. It was another organization that donated to the entity. Donors to that organization had also made campaigns. So it was quite a bit more attenuated than the actual people who were awarded the contract. So, but.
Well, I was going to ask, speaking of that, do you fear that you may have violated, if what the report outlines constitutes a violation of policy? Are you afraid? I'm assuming you've also participated in RFP processes. I'm also assuming that as a candidate for office, you've received donations. And because the conflict appears to be that an organization donated to both the candidate and the nonprofit, do you fear that you yourself or possibly other council members have had the same conflict essentially?
You know, I'm not aware of it, and I'm interested in talking to the auditors more today about that, because I think as you are talking, you could spin out a lot of various connections and then potentially get to that place. So I'm, you know, as I said, I'm concerned about it, but I don't believe I have, or particularly other members have. But that's why we're going to be talking with the auditors today to find out what exactly they mean, and did they, you know, what kind of interviews did they conduct of people to kind of get to the bottom. I took the report at face value, was that there could be an appearance issue that we need to address. And I'm trying to think if I've actually sat on an RFP committee in this line of business. I don't remember it, but that's, since this report has come out, I've known about this for just a few weeks, but I've started thinking about, okay, should council members sit on committees, or maybe not sit on committees during election year, or whatever it is. So it's something we're thinking about and we want to get right. And the only way you do that is by shining some light on it. And that's what we're in the process of doing.
Adam, and if I could just follow up on that really quickly, the council president is correct that as I understand in talking with the state auditor's office, they are not going to come to the conclusion of whether a violation did or did not occur. They are focused on an internal audit of our practices and our policies and procedures to make sure. And then what their issue is in this case is we didn't have those controls in place to identify and disclose potential conflicts of interest. So there's not a way to evaluate whether there was or wasn't one. That's what I think you're going to hear from them in about a half hour or so.
Okay, and then just lastly, and I'll let somebody else jump in. The audit even notes the high turnover within the department. How does the city and administration provide some stability so that we're not seeing folks maybe leave the department and go to the very nonprofits that are competing for contracts?
Mayor and Cupid, if you want to address that.
Yeah, Cupid, go ahead.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is that being very clear about what the established protocol is internally, and having these conversations because this community is so connected, and acknowledging that and making sure that everyone is aware so they feel comfortable in doing this work. I know as we have this conversation this morning, there are a lot of dedicated team members who are wanting to make sure that they're understanding how they're going to do this work moving forward. And you have to remember, in the mayor's statement and in my statement, we indicated that some of the concerned team members had indicated their concerns in regards to this process. So in order to kind of support them in this, we're making sure that we have an outline protocol. We're providing ongoing support. We're working with the procurement processes and even with HR on whatever necessary tools need to be enacted. And then, you know, I don't know if I can comment on where people move outside of working for the city, but I know that internally we're trying to make sure that staff has the space to talk about these processes and the tools that they need to make sure that they're in alignment with what the processes are.
And I can't really speak to the operations or the department before I came into office. This department does a lot of work for the city. It deploys millions and millions of dollars into the community and for all kinds of projects. And so the work needs to be looked at, reviewed continuously, policies and practices put into place so that the job is done right. And, you know, we brought Cupid on in November. He's doing an outstanding job. He is doing an overhaul of that department, and even involving some strategic planning so that we have more stability within that department. And I commend the work that he's doing there. So the city of Spokane is very, very fortunate to have someone like Cupid overseeing this division and this department.
Thank you both. Other media members have questions?
Brian, this is Brian.
Yes.
I just wanted to add one response to a couple of questions back, just in thinking about it. And I wanted to remind people that a couple of years ago, council did change some of the campaign finance rules in Spokane and said that people who actually sign contracts with the city can't donate to city campaigns. So we did that several years ago. We got some resistance from people out there who did business with the city and wanted to be able to donate, but we did put that law in case. So companies or their owners can't donate to city campaigns if they do business with the city.
Thank you. Other questions from members of the media? And a reminder, you're on mute, so if you're trying to ask a question, you'll have to find the unmute button, upper right-hand corner. Okay, seeing none. Daniel, Adam, did you get all of your questions answered?
No, but I think that's, I don't think we're kind of, it sounds like you're not willing to sort of dive into the details of what the report said at this point.
Yeah, that's for the state auditor's office to do when they report back to the council committee here in another half hour, 45 minutes.
Okay.
All righty. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much for joining. We appreciate your time today. The news release should be in your inboxes with a link to the full report, and the council meets at 1:15 today in the Finance and Administration Committee, and that's where the state auditor's office will report back to the council as part of our regular exit process with them. Thank you all for joining. Have a good rest of your day.